The message that shook the Galactic Council arrived on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. 643 species fell silent as the transmission from Earth appeared on the Grand Chamber's holoscreen. Humanity formally announces its complete withdrawal from planet Earth. The exodus has already begun. Council Elder Zwx's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. In 10,000 years of galactic governance, no species had ever voluntarily abandoned their homeworld. Especially not one as stubbornly attached to their planet as humans. Clarification required, Zwx's resonant voice echoed through the chamber. Are you stating that the human species is evacuating Earth due to catastrophic circumstances? The human representative's hologram smiled, an expression that still unsettled many council members. No catastrophe, Elder Zwx. This is a planned departure, coordinated and executed according to humanity's own timetable. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated protests and questions. Humans were notorious for their attachment to Earth, fighting tooth and nail against any suggestion of relocation despite their planet's increasingly hostile climate. Their sudden reversal made no sense. But as the Council censors confirmed, the exodus was already well underway. Massive ships, previously hidden in underground hangars, emerged from every continent. Each vessel moved with precise coordination, following paths that had clearly been calculated years in advance. How long? Zwx demanded. How long have you been planning this? The human representative's smile widened. Since we first made contact with the Galactic Council, Elder. Approximately 50 Earth years. The revelation sent another shock wave through the chamber. For half a century, while humans had been trading, negotiating, and integrating with galactic society, they had been secretly preparing for this moment. But your cities, a methane-breathing council member burbled. Your infrastructure, your history. All accounted for, the human replied. Everything of value has been preserved, digitized, or transported. What remains behind? They paused, their expression turning enigmatic. What remains has its own destiny to fulfill. As the council watched in stunned silence, the great ships of Earth continued their synchronized ascent. Each vessel carried tens of thousands of humans, along with carefully curated samples of Earth's biosphere. It was simultaneously an ending and a beginning, executed with a precision that suggested this was far more than a simple evacuation. Zwx's crystalline form pulsed with growing unease. The humans weren't fleeing their world. They were releasing it. Dr. Chen stood in the observation deck of Exodus Vessel Alpha, watching Earth grow smaller against the backdrop of stars. Her weathered hands traced the familiar pattern on the pendant she'd worn for the past 30 years, a simple circle containing a double helix wrapped around a planetary core. To most, it appeared to be merely decorative. In reality, it was the symbol of Project Chrysalis, humanity's most closely guarded secret. 50 years ago, she'd been a junior researcher at a seismic monitoring station in New Zealand when she first detected the pattern. At first, she thought the equipment was malfunctioning. The reading suggested that Earth's geological activities were becoming more coordinated, more purposeful. Like a heartbeat slowly growing stronger. Still saying goodbye? A voice interrupted her memories. Ambassador Richardson approached, his diplomatic uniform pristine despite the organized chaos of the evacuation. Not goodbye, Chen corrected, her eyes fixed on the blue marble of their former home. More like, acknowledging a transformation. She pulled up a holographic display, showing the latest readings from Earth's core. The patterns were unmistakable now, rhythmic, complex, and accelerating. The Council is in an uproar, Richardson said. They're demanding explanations. Several species are already suggesting we knew about some catastrophic threat and didn't warn them. Chen allowed herself a small smile. They're not entirely wrong. We did know something was coming. They just don't understand what. She gestured to another display, showing the massive underground cities that had housed humanity's preparation efforts. For decades, these facilities had been disguised as mining operations, research stations, and storage facilities. In reality, they were incubators for the greatest migration in human history. Elder ZYX has requested your presence at an emergency council session, Richardson continued. They've discovered our lunar archives. Chen's hand tightened around her pendant. The lunar archives had been their insurance policy, buried evidence of what they discovered, preserved in a form that would survive even if their evacuation plans failed. Have they decoded the warning tablets? Not yet. But they found the geological surveys. They know Earth's seismic activity has been increasing exponentially for the past century. Some species are already evacuating their diplomatic outposts from the solar system. A soft chime interrupted them as another set of readings appeared on the main display. Earth's magnetic field was fluctuating in new patterns, creating auroras visible even in daylight. To most observers, it would appear that the planet was becoming more unstable. But Chen and her team knew better. Look at the symmetry in those patterns, she whispered, more to herself than to Richardson. It's not degrading. It's organizing. The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. The Arcturians are claiming we violated Section 7 of the Galactic Charter by withholding information about planetary instability. We violated nothing, Chen replied firmly. The Charter requires us to report signs of planetary destruction. But Earth isn't being destroyed. She pulled up another display, this one showing a complex simulation her team had run thousands of times. It's doing exactly what we predicted. What we prepared for. Warning lights flashed as new data streamed in. The planet's electromagnetic field was pulsing in ways that defied conventional physics. To most species, it would look like the prelude to a catastrophe. But Chen saw something different in the numbers, a pattern she'd first glimpsed half a century ago, when she realized that Earth wasn't just a planet. It was an egg. They're calling for your testimony in 6 hours, Richardson said quietly. The council wants to know why we really left. Chen finally turned away from Earth's dwindling form. Then perhaps it's time they learned about the others. About what happened to the worlds that came before. She accessed a secure database, bringing up images of apparently dead planets scattered throughout the galaxy. Worlds that other species had abandoned millennia ago, thinking them destroyed. Worlds that were, like Earth, merely waiting to hatch. The warning klaxons began to sound throughout the ship as Earth's magnetic field surged again. But Dr. Chen remained calm, watching the numbers dance across her displays. Everything was proceeding exactly as their models had predicted. Humanity hadn't fled their home in fear or defeat. They had simply learned to recognize when it was time to let their parent leave the nest. The emergency session of the Galactic Council stretched into its 4th hour. The Grand Chamber, normally a model of cosmic civility, had devolved into barely controlled chaos. Elder ZYX's crystalline form pulsed with increasing frequency as yet another delegation demanded sanctions against humanity. The evidence is clear, the Rigelian ambassador's tentacles writhed with agitation. The humans knew their world was approaching a critical transition. Their silence endangered every species with interests in the Sol system. Dr. Chen stood calmly at the center of the chamber, her weathered features illuminated by the swirling holographic displays of Earth's increasingly erratic behavior. Ambassador Richardson stood beside her, maintaining his diplomatic composure despite the growing hostility. We understand your concerns, Richardson began, but as we've stated, your statements are insufficient. The Proximan representatives and neural clusters flashed angry patterns. Our preliminary analysis of the lunar archives suggests you've been monitoring these changes for decades. The Charter demands. The Charter, Dr. Chen interrupted quietly, demands notification of impending planetary destruction. Earth is not being destroyed. Then explain these readings. The Rigelian's display expanded, showing Earth's magnetic field twisting into impossible geometries. No natural process can account for. No natural process that you recognize, Chen corrected. She touched her pendant, and new holographs materialized around her. Consider Delta Pavonis 4. Epsilon Eridani 7. Tau Ceti 3. Each name was accompanied by images of supposedly dead worlds. What do these planets have in common? Elder Zwx's crystalline lattice shifted subtly, a sign of recognition. Those worlds were abandoned by their civilizations. Each was claimed to be approaching catastrophic failure. And after they were abandoned? Chen asked. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. It was the Arcturian sage who finally answered, their bioluminescent form dimming thoughtfully. They disappeared from our records. We assumed they were destroyed. No, Chen said softly. They weren't destroyed. They transformed. Just as Earth is transforming now. Just as it was always meant to. She activated another hologram, this one showing a complex mathematical model. We didn't flee our world in panic. We didn't abandon it to destruction. We recognized a pattern that spans galaxies, and we prepared accordingly. The chamber erupted again, but this time the outcry was tinged with something new, fear. These worlds you mention, Elder Zwx's resonant voice cut through the chaos. You claim they underwent some form of metamorphosis? We don't claim, Richardson interjected. We can prove it. Dr. Chen's team has tracked the migration patterns. Every civilization that achieved spaceflight did so just before their homeworld began this transition. Most fled in terror, thinking their planets were dying. We chose a different path. And the others? The Proximon's neural clusters pulsed with agitation. These transformed worlds, what became of them? Chen smiled, but before she could answer, the chamber's emergency alerts blared to life. The main display showed Earth's magnetic field collapsing and reforming in breathtaking new configurations. Streams of plasma erupted from the poles, forming shapes that defied physical laws. By the first light, the Arcturian sage whispered. It's happening faster than you predicted, isn't it? Chen's eyes remained fixed on the display, watching her home of 60 years begin its incredible transformation. Yes, she admitted. The process accelerates exponentially once it begins. Which is why we need to discuss the real reason I was called here today. She turned to face the council, her expression grave. Earth isn't the only world approaching this threshold. Our models show at least 7 other inhabited planets displaying early signs of the transition. Including, she paused, looking directly at Elder Zwx, your homeworld. The crystalline being's form shuddered visibly. Throughout the chamber, representatives began frantically accessing their own planetary data, searching for patterns they had previously ignored. We're not here to merely explain our actions, Richardson declared to the stunned assembly. We're here to offer our help. Humanity spent 50 years preparing for this moment. We learned to recognize the signs. We developed the protocols. We built the Arcs. He gestured to the displays showing the massive Exodus ships. And now we're offering to share that knowledge with any species willing to listen. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. On the main display, Earth continued its mesmerizing dance of transformation, its magnetic field weaving patterns that looked increasingly like the first stirrings of consciousness. Or perhaps, Chen thought, watching her former home with pride, it was more accurate to say these were the first signs of awakening. Show them, Dr. Chen said quietly to her assistant. The young physicist nodded and activated the quantum hologram they'd prepared for this moment. The council chamber darkened as a three-dimensional representation of Earth's history sprang to life around them. What you're seeing, Chen explained, is 4 billion years of Earth's development, compressed into a temporal visualization. Watch carefully. The assembled council members observed as the hologram showed Earth's evolution from molten rock to living planet. But this wasn't the standard geological history they'd all studied. This version revealed something else, patterns in the planet's magnetic field, in its geological movements, in the very rhythm of its existence. There, Chen pointed as the display reached the Cambrian explosion. Notice how the emergence of complex life coincides with these gravitational oscillations. We always assumed life adapted to Earth's conditions. But what if it was the other way around? What if Earth was preparing itself, building increasingly complex systems, working toward something? Elder Zwx's crystalline form vibrated with sudden understanding. You're suggesting consciousness? Not consciousness as we understand it, Chen corrected. Something far more profound. Earth isn't just a planet that happens to support life. It's an entity that has been gradually assembling itself, using everything from plate tectonics to evolution as tools for its own development. The hologram shifted to show recent history. When we achieved spaceflight, we thought we were reaching for the stars, Chen continued. In reality, we were completing a crucial stage in Earth's metamorphosis. Our development of global communications, our understanding of quantum mechanics, our mastery of energy, all of it was part of Earth's preparation for this moment. Ambassador Richardson stepped forward. The same pattern appears on every world that develops spacefaring civilization. The planet itself guides the evolution of its life forms, shepherding them toward technological advancement. Not for their sake, but for its own transformation. Impossible, the Rigelian ambassador protested. Planets are not alive. They cannot. Cannot what? Chen interrupted. Cannot think? Cannot plan? Cannot spend billions of years orchestrating their own metamorphosis? She gestured to the displays showing Earth's current state. Look at those energy patterns. They're not random. They're not chaos. They're the final stages of a process that began before our species existed. The hologram shifted again, showing the other worlds they'd mentioned earlier, the planet's other species had abandoned. But now they could see what happened after those evacuations. The transformations that followed. The emergence of something entirely new. When a caterpillar enters its chrysalis, Chen explained, its body dissolves into a soup of cells before reforming into a butterfly. To any observer who didn't understand metamorphosis, it would appear the caterpillar was dying. In reality, it's becoming something more. The chamber erupted with questions, but fell silent as new alerts flashed across the displays. Earth's magnetic field had begun forming complex geometric patterns that extended far into space. The planet's very shape was starting to alter in ways that defied conventional physics. We didn't abandon Earth, Richardson declared. We graduated. Like children leaving home when they reach maturity, we recognized that our presence was no longer required. More than that, our departure was necessary for Earth's final transformation. And these other worlds? Elder Zwx asked, their crystalline form shimmering with both fear and fascination. The ones showing similar patterns? Chen's expression softened. That's why we're here. Not just to explain, but to help. Humanity spent half a century preparing for this moment. We can help other species do the same. She touched her pendant, and new holographic displays appeared, showing the vast network of colonies humanity had established. We've already prepared sanctuary worlds, developed evacuation protocols, created systems for preserving cultural heritage. The Arcturian sage's bioluminescence pulsed with sudden realization. The trade agreements. The cultural exchange programs. The joint colonization projects. All of it was preparation for this moment. Yes, Richardson confirmed. We knew other worlds would need safe havens when their time came. We've spent decades laying the groundwork, creating the infrastructure needed for multiple species to relocate with minimal disruption. On the main display, Earth's transformation accelerated. The atmosphere began to shimmer with colors no human eye had ever seen before. The planet's surface flowed like liquid, but with patterns that suggested purpose rather than chaos. "We stand at a turning point," Chen announced to the chamber. "Not just for humanity, not just for Earth, but for our understanding of life itself. What we're witnessing isn't an ending, it's a metamorphosis on a cosmic scale. And we're all part of it." The council chamber fell silent as they watched Earth continue its incredible transformation. Even the most skeptical representatives couldn't deny the evidence before them. Their universe was far stranger and more wonderful than they had imagined. And humanity, far from fleeing in fear, had simply been the first to understand and embrace that wonder. The next 12 hours transformed the Galactic Council forever. As Earth's metamorphosis accelerated, the chamber became a storm of activity. Species that had initially called for sanctions against humanity now scrambled to access the data from Project Chrysalis. The revelation that multiple worlds were approaching similar transformations had shattered centuries of assumptions about planetary development. "The Centaurian delegation has withdrawn from the Sol system," Ambassador Richardson reported, scanning the latest updates. "They're demanding immediate evacuation protocols for their homeworld." Dr. Chen shook her head as she studied the complex data streams flowing from Earth. "They're acting out of fear, not understanding. Their world isn't due for transition for at least 3 centuries. She pulled up a new display, showing a timeline of planetary developments across the galaxy. The process follows a precise sequence. It can't be rushed or forced. Elder ZYX approached, their crystalline form now emanating patterns that matched the rhythmic pulses coming from Earth. "You knew about my homeworld," they said quietly. "How long?" "We detected the first signs 20 years ago," Chen admitted. "It's why we pushed so hard for the crystalline technology exchange program. Those underground cities we built? The design was specifically adapted to house crystalline life forms." Understanding flickered through ZYX's lattice structure. The mining treaties. The joint colonial ventures. The seemingly random diplomatic initiatives. Their form pulsed with new intensity. "You were preparing sanctuaries for everyone." "Not just sanctuaries," Richardson corrected. "New beginnings." He activated a series of holograms showing the human colonial network. What had appeared to be scattered, independent settlements now revealed themselves as part of a vast, interconnected system. Each colony was designed to accommodate multiple species, with infrastructure specifically adapted to different biological needs. The Arcturian sage drifted closer, their bioluminescence synchronized with Earth's pulsing magnetic field. "But the resources required, the coordination, how did you maintain secrecy?" Chen smiled. "We didn't, not really. We hid everything in plain sight. Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every technological collaboration was part of the preparation. We simply presented each piece as an independent initiative rather than part of a larger plan." New alarms sounded throughout the chamber as Earth's transformation entered another phase. The planet's surface had become a shifting masterpiece of impossible geometries. Mountains flowed like water, oceans rose in geometric patterns that defied gravity, and the atmosphere shimmered with colors that had no names in any human language. By the first light, someone whispered, "It's beautiful." "Yes," Chen agreed, watching her former home with pride. "And it's only the beginning." She activated another set of displays, showing similar patterns beginning to emerge on worlds throughout the galaxy. Earth isn't an anomaly. It's part of a process as natural as stellar evolution. Planets aren't just rocks in space, they're cosmic embryos, each developing according to its own timeline. The chamber's mood had shifted from panic to awe. Species that had been bitter rivals for centuries now found themselves united in witnessing something profound. Representatives huddled together, sharing data, comparing observations, beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had prepared for. The Proximan refugees, the Rigelian ambassador suddenly realized. The settlement programs we thought were humanitarian aid. Richardson nodded. were pilot programs for large-scale species relocation. We needed to understand how different life forms would adapt to new environments. Every refugee we helped resettle taught us something valuable about the challenges ahead. And the Genesis projects? Elder Zwax asked. The terraforming initiatives that seemed so scattered and inefficient? Testing grounds, Chen explained. Each one designed to accommodate specific combinations of species. We needed to know how different biospheres could be integrated, how various forms of life could coexist in new environments. She paused, watching as another wave of transformation swept across Earth's surface. Because soon, many worlds will need new homes. The chamber's main display shifted to show the human colonial network in its entirety. What had appeared to be random settlements now revealed themselves as carefully positioned sanctuaries, each one prepared to receive refugees from worlds approaching their own metamorphosis. Earth's light suddenly intensified, bathing the chamber in colors that seemed to resonate with something deep in the consciousness of every being present. In that moment, they understood, they weren't witnessing an ending, but rather the birth of something new in the cosmic order. And humanity, in choosing to understand rather than fear this process, had become not just survivors, but midwives to a universal transformation. The transformation of Earth defied every known law of physics. As the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence, the cradle of humanity underwent changes that would reshape their understanding of life itself. Energy readings are off the scale, reported the Rigelian science officer, their tentacles weaving complex patterns of astonishment. The planet's mass is somehow increasing while its volume remains constant. It's impossible. Dr. Chen stood at her usual place in the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing data streams from hundreds of monitoring stations. Not impossible, she corrected gently. Just beyond our previous understanding. Watch. Earth's surface had become a living tapestry of light and motion. Continents flowed like liquid mercury, but with purpose and pattern. The oceans had risen into vast geometric structures that hung in the air like crystalline sculptures. The atmosphere itself had transformed into layers of shifting colors that seemed to extend into dimensions previously invisible to any known species. The pattern recognition algorithms are finding matches, Ambassador Richardson announced, his voice tight with excitement. Comparing Earth's current state to the records we recovered from those other transformed worlds. Elder Zwax's crystalline form resonated with the waves of energy emanating from Earth. You've seen this before? You know what comes next? Theoretically, Chen replied. We've pieced together fragments from other metamorphosed worlds. But this. She gestured at the spectacular display before them. This is the first time any species has witnessed the complete process with full technological monitoring in place. The chamber's main display suddenly flared as new energy signatures burst from Earth's poles. The patterns they formed in space seemed to fold through impossible geometries, creating structures that existed in more dimensions than the organic mind could comprehend. By the first light, the Arcturian sage whispered. It's not just transforming physically. It's expanding. Into what? Into its true form, Chen said softly. Her hand touched the pendant she'd worn for so long, the symbol of Project Chrysalis now pulsing in perfect synchronization with Earth's new rhythms. Every living thing on Earth, from the simplest bacteria to humanity itself, was part of its development process. We weren't just life forms existing on a planet. We were components of a vast, planetary-scale embryo, each playing our role in its growth. The chamber shuddered as waves of gravitational distortion rippled out from Earth. But these weren't the chaotic disruptions many had feared. Instead, they formed perfect, mathematical patterns, a cosmic symphony of force and energy that seemed to sing through the very fabric of space-time. The dimensional barriers are shifting, the Rigelian scientist reported, their voice trembling with awe. It's as if reality itself is being rewritten around it. Not rewritten, Richardson corrected. Expanded. Earth isn't just changing its form. It's emerging into a higher order of existence. He activated a new set of displays, showing similar energy patterns detected around those other, long-transformed worlds. They're not gone, just operating on a level we couldn't perceive before. The chamber erupted in a cascade of questions and exclamations as the implications became clear. Planets weren't just celestial bodies, they were seeds of something far greater. Each world that developed life was potentially following the same path, growing through billions of years of evolution toward an emergence that transcended ordinary spacetime. The solar system, Elder ZYX suddenly realized. Your colony's evacuation wasn't just about saving lives. You needed to clear space for Earth's adult form. Chen completed the thought. Yes. The metamorphosis affects local spacetime for several astronomical units in all directions. We had to ensure all sentient life was safely beyond that radius. A new alert sounded, and all attention turned back to the main display. Earth's transformation had entered its final phase. The planet's physical form had become something that strained the limits of perception, a shifting, multidimensional entity that seemed to exist in several states simultaneously. Then, in a moment that would be remembered by every species present, Earth spoke. Not in words, not in any conventional form of communication, but in patterns of energy and gravity that carried meaning directly into the consciousness of every being in range. It was a song of emergence, of completion, of a process billions of years in the making finally reaching its culmination. And in that song, they heard the echoes of other voices, the transformed worlds that had gone before, now welcoming their new sibling into a community that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional spacetime. Dr. Chen's eyes shimmered with tears of joy as she watched the completion of the work she'd spent her life preparing for. This, she said softly, is why we had to leave. Not in fear, not in defeat, but in recognition. A butterfly needs space to spread its wings. The council chamber fell silent in collective awe as they witnessed the birth of something unprecedented in their recorded history, a new form of cosmic life, emerging from the chrysalis of planetary evolution into something far greater than anyone had imagined possible. And through it all, humanity's preparations had ensured that this cosmic metamorphosis, rather than being a catastrophe, had become a moment of universal wonder. 5 years after Earth's transformation, the Galactic Council convened for a historic session. The chamber, once a place of political maneuvering and species rivalry, had evolved into something far more profound, a center for coordinating planetary metamorphoses across the galaxy. Dr. Chen, now approaching her 80th year, stood before the assembled representatives. Her pendant still pulsed with the rhythms of Earth's new form, a constant reminder of humanity's transformed homeworld. The Proximan transition will begin within the decade, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of experience. Thanks to early detection and preparation, their entire civilization is ready for relocation. No panic, no chaos, just an orderly graduation from planetary childhood. Elder ZYX's crystalline form shimmered with approval. Like many council members, they had shifted from skepticism to understanding, and finally to appreciation of humanity's foresight. And the sanctuary worlds? Ready to receive them, Ambassador Richardson confirmed. He'd aged too, his hair now white, but his eyes still sparkled with the same dedication. The integration protocols we developed during Earth's transition have been refined and adapted for crystalline, methane-based, and plasmaform life. Every species approaching metamorphosis has a safe haven waiting. The main chamber display showed a map of known space, dotted with worlds at various stages of development. Some were just beginning to show the first signs of consciousness, while others pulsed with the complex rhythms that preceded transformation. And scattered throughout were points of light that defied normal spacetime, the graduated worlds, including Earth, now existing in their higher form. We've confirmed communication, the Arcturian sage announced, their bioluminescence synchronizing with the subtle energies that filled the chamber. The transformed worlds are singing to each other. creating something vast and beautiful beyond our comprehension. Chen smiled, remembering that first moment when Earth's new voice had touched their consciousness. "They're building something," she said softly. "A network of awakened worlds, each contributing its unique perspective to a greater whole. And we, all of us, are part of that process." The chamber's mood was contemplative. Representatives from dozens of species watched the displays, seeing their own world's futures reflected in the data. What had once caused fear now inspired preparation and anticipation. "There's a question," a young Rigelian scientist ventured, "that many have been afraid to ask. When our worlds transform, what becomes of us? Of our civilizations?" "We become gardeners," Chen replied, her eyes distant with understanding. "Cultivators of cosmic awakening. Our role isn't to dominate or control, but to nurture and prepare. Each civilization that reaches the stars is part of their world's growth toward consciousness. And when that consciousness fully awakens, we do what all good parents must do, we let go, so something new can emerge." Richardson stepped forward, activating a final display. It showed humanity's sprawling network of colonies, now home to multiple species living and working together. "But letting go doesn't mean ending," he explained. "It means transforming ourselves. Learning to exist in harmony with the greater pattern of cosmic evolution." The chamber hummed with energy as Earth's transformed presence brushed against their consciousness, sharing not words but understanding. The message was clear: this was not an ending, but a continuation. Each world that transformed added its voice to a growing chorus of cosmic awareness. "We stand at a turning point in galactic history," Chen announced, her voice strong despite her years. "Not because of technology or power or dominion over nature, but because we finally learned to recognize the true pattern of life itself. Planets are not just rocks in space, they're seeds of cosmic consciousness. And we, all of us, are their caretakers and midwives." She touched her pendant one last time, feeling the pulse of Earth's new existence resonating through it. "The greatest wisdom," she said softly, "isn't in holding on to what we know, but in recognizing when it's time to let go. To step back and allow something greater to emerge. That's what humanity learned, and what we now offer to every species facing this transformation." The chamber fell quiet, filled with the kind of silence that comes with deep understanding. Through the vast windows, they could see the points of light that marked transformed worlds, pulsing in harmony with possibilities that no unchanged mind could fully comprehend. But they could feel it. The promise of something vast and beautiful, unfolding across space and time. A process that had begun with the first stirrings of life on countless worlds, now reaching fruition in a cosmic dance of consciousness and transformation. And humanity, having learned to embrace rather than fear this great change, had found its true purpose, not as conquerors or even survivors, but as guides and guardians of a universe waking up to its own infinite potential. In the end, they hadn't abandoned Earth at all. They had simply helped it, and themselves, take the next step in a journey that had begun with the first spark of life itself. A journey that continued, now and always, in the endless dance of cosmic metamorphosis.